The sweet little girl I had pictured all this time turned out to be none other than my university SP teacher, Coach Marcus Hale. I had asked him about everything, his personality, his likes, his dreams, but I had never asked for his real name, nor his gender. I couldn't look him straight in the eye. My voice shook as I muttered, "Hi, hello, Coach." He leaned closer, his low voice rolling off my screen name like thunder. Dreaming of love. The sound of it made my whole body tremble. "Coach, I swear, this is a mistake. Just a ridiculous misunderstanding," I stammered. I turned on my heel, desperate to escape. "I am sorry, Coach. Let us just end it here." But before I could take another step, his hand closed firmly around my wrist. His dark eyes burned into mine, filled with something I could read. "Don't let go." I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs, as memories of every late night conversation and every gentle word we shared online came rushing back. For an entire year, Luna had been my safe harbor, my escape from the awkward reality of college life where I, Ethan Reed, perpetually felt out of place. In the lecture halls of the communications department, I could blend into the background. Online, with Luna, I was someone worth knowing. We met in a literature forum discussing Oscar Wilde's work. Her analysis of The Picture of Dorian Gray had captivated me, so insightful about the duality of human nature, the masks we wear. When she messaged me privately to continue our conversation, something in her words felt like coming home. "I feel like you see parts of me no one else notices," she written one night, 3 months into our conversations. I had fallen in love with her mind first, the way she articulated emotions I could name, the gentleness with which she encouraged me to share my poetry, the quiet vulnerability when she admitted her own insecurities. We never video called. Luna claimed shyness, a trait I understood all too well. Her profile picture was an artistic shot of a sunlit bookshelf. Mine was a black and white photo of my hands, holding a vintage camera. We were both hiding, I supposed, finding safety in partial anonymity. Someday, she had promised. We'll meet when we both ready. That day had come, or so I thought. The cafe we'd chosen was quiet, tucked away from campus, in a corner of the city neither of us frequented. I arrived 15 minutes early, nervously arranging and rearranging the single rose I brought, a gesture that now seemed painfully cliquet. The bell above the door chimed. I looked up, expecting a petite woman with the delicate sensibilities I imagined Luna possessed. Instead, Coach Marcus Hale's broad shoulders filled the doorframe. My mind refused to make the connection, even as I watched him scan the room, even as his eyes locked on the rose, even as recognition dawned on his face. Coach Hale, the man who made Tuesday and Thursday afternoons a living hell for me in mandatory physical education, the instructor who always seemed to notice when I lagged behind during laps, who pushed me harder than others, whose presence made me acutely aware of my own physical inadequacies. "Dreaming of love," he said, and my world collapsed. Now, standing in that cafe with his hand wrapped around my wrist, I felt like I was drowning. The low timbre of his voice saying, "Don't let go," reverberated through me like a physical force. I don't understand," I whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. "You are Luna. You are the person I've been talking to every night for a year." His grip loosened slightly, but he didn't release me. "Let us sit down," he said, guiding me back to the table. "Please, Ethan, 5 minutes." Hearing my name in his voice, not my student ID or Reed, barked across the gymnasium, sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. I sank into the chair, still unable to look at him directly. "Why," I finally managed, "was this some kind of joke to you?" "Number," the word was firm, absolute. "Nothing about this, about us, has been a joke." I risked a glance up, Coach Hale, Marcus, looked different here, without the sharp whistle around his neck or the authoritative stance he took on the basketball court. His dark hair was slightly damp, as if he de-showered in a hurry. He de-traded his usual university, branded athletic wear for a simple blue button, down that strained slightly across his shoulders. "I never lied to you, Ethan," he continued. "Not about anything important." "You let me believe you were a woman," I countered, heat rising to my face. "I never said I was, you assumed. Your username is Luna." "It is my dog's name," he said quietly. "A German shepherd. I got her as a puppy when I started teaching. She is in half the photos in my apartment." I recalled the glimpses of a canine companion in the background of pictures. Descent of his bookshelves, his record collection, his kitchen experiments. I thought nothing of it at the time. "This is insane," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "You are my professor." "Teaching assistant," he corrected, "and only for physical education." "That doesn't make this okay." Marcus leaned forward, his forearms resting on the table. "Tell me something, Ethan. The person you've been talking to for the past year, the one who helped you through your anxiety about your creative writing submissions, who listened when you were homesick, who sent you music recommendations at 3 in the morning because you couldn't sleep. Was any of that not real?" I swallowed hard. "That is not fair. I am not trying to trick you. I am asking you to see past what you expected and recognize what is actually there." The waitress approached, breaking the tension momentarily. Marcus ordered black coffee. I asked for water, my throat suddenly parched. When she left, I finally asked the question burning inside me. "Why didn't you tell me who you were when you realized I was your student?" He sighed, running a hand over the stubble on his jaw. "I didn't know at first. You never mentioned your university by name, just like I didn't. When I figured it out, after you mentioned that poetry reading at Westlake Hall, it was already too late." "Too late for what?" His eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. "I was already in love with you." The next Tuesday arrived with cruel inevitability. I considered skipping physical education entirely, but that would only delay the inevitable. Besides, my scholarship required full attendance. The gymnasium smaller somehow, more suffocating. I changed in the locker room with mechanical movements, avoiding conversation with my classmates. When I emerged in my standard issue shorts and t-shirt, Coach Hale was already on the court, clipboard in hand. "Today, we reworking on basketball fundamentals," he announced to the class, his voice echoing against the high ceiling. "Partner up for passing drills." My usual partner, Sam, was absent. I stood awkwardly as others quickly paired off, feeling Marcus' gaze like a physical weight. He approached with a basketball tucked under his arm. "Reed," he said, professional and distant. "You'll work with me today." Several classmates shot sympathetic glances my way. Coach Hale was known for his rigorous standards, especially when demonstrating techniques. We moved to an open space on the court. He passed the ball with perfect form, his movements fluid and controlled. I caught it clumsily. "Chest pass," he instructed. "Remember to step into it. Follow through with your thumbs pointing down." I tried to focus on the mechanics of the movement rather than the surreal situation. This man had written to me last night. "I understand if you need space. Just know I am here when you are ready to talk." Now he was correcting my elbow position as if we were nothing more than teacher and reluctant student. "Better," he said when I managed a decent pass. "Now let's work on your bounce pass." For 15 excruciating minutes, we continued the drills. His coaching was professional, his feedback constructive. Only I noticed the lingering touch when he adjusted my stance, the way his voice softened when offering encouragement, the flash of something vulnerable when our eyes accidentally met. "Your form has improved since last semester," he noted during a water break. "I doubt that," I muttered. "You doubt yourself too much," he replied. It was exactly what Luna would have said. The class moved on to a practice game. Coach Hale divided us into teams, placing himself opposite me. When I attempted a shot, he was there, his defense impeccable but carefully measured. He could have easily blocked me completely. I'd seen him demolish players on the university team during demonstrations. But instead, he created just enough challenge to push me without humiliating me. When I finally scored, the surprise on my face must have been evident. A smile tugged at his lips before he schooled his expression back to professional neutrality. After class, I lingered in the locker room, waiting until most students had left. I needed to confront this situation, to establish boundaries, to make sense of the chaos in my mind. I found him in his small office adjacent to the gym, organizing equipment. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway, hope flashing across his features before he contained it. "Ethan," he acknowledged, setting down a stack of cones. "This can happen," I said without preamble. "Whatever this is between us, it needs to stop." He nodded slowly. "I understand why you feel that way. Do you? Because you are my teacher. There is a power dynamic here that can be ignored." "I am aware of the ethical considerations," he said quietly. "More than you know. It is why I've been respectful of boundaries in class." "Respectful?" I laughed incredulously. "You've been watching me the entire semester, knowing who I was, while I had no idea." His jaw tightened. "That is not entirely fair. I only realized you were in my class 2 months ago. And yes, I should have told you immediately. That was my mistake, and I am sorry." The sincerity in his voice was unsettling. It reminded me too much of late night conversations with Luna, with him, about integrity and honesty. "Why did you even start talking to me in the first place?" I asked. "What was the point?" He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. The pose highlighted the strength in his shoulders, the definition in his forearms, where he rolled up his sleeves. "I joined that literature forum because teaching leaves me little time for intellectual conversation about things I love. When I read your analysis of wild symbolism, it was thoughtful, insightful in ways the published critiques weren't." A small smile touched his lips. "You saw things others missed." I was intrigued. "So it was just academic interest?" "At first. Then we started talking about deeper things. Your poetry, your fears, the way you see the world. It became much more than that." The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. I had shared more of myself with Luna, with Marcus, than anyone else in my life. The thought that all those intimate exchanges had been with my intimidating PA teacher was still incomprehensible. "I need time," I said, finally. "This is too much." He nodded, respecting the boundary. "Take all the time you need. I'll keep things strictly professional in class." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me once more. "Ethan, for what it is worth, I never meant to hurt you. Everything I shared with you was real. Every word." I didn't respond. Couldn't respond. The problem wasn't that I doubted his sincerity. It was that I believed it completely. 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. In class, Coach Hale was scrupulously professional, treating me with the same firm but fair attention he gave every student. If anything, he was more distant than before, careful not to single me out. Online, Luna's account remained silent. No messages, no reactions to my posts in the forums. We both frequented. The absence felt like a physical ache. I hadn't realized how much those daily conversations had become part of my life until they stopped. I found myself rereading our old exchanges late at night, searching for clues I should have noticed. There were so many, now that I knew what to look for. The vague references to teaching, the deep knowledge of basketball statistics, the mentions of early morning routines that aligned perfectly with athletic training schedules. "Do you ever feel like you are playing a role?" he had written once. "Like there is a version of you people expect, and showing them anything else would shatter their perception completely." At the time, I thought he was talking about social anxiety, about feeling misunderstood, something I related to deeply. Now I recognized it for what it was, a confession. On Thursday afternoon, A thunderstorm rolled in during physical education. The gymnasium echoed with rain pounding against the roof. Occasional thunder, causing the lights to flicker. "Indoor track today," Coach Hale announced. 6 laps at your own pace, then stretching. I paced myself near the back of the group, lost in thought. So lost that I didn't notice the loose shoelace until it was too late. My foot caught, sending me sprawling across the polished wood floor. Pain shot through my ankle as I tried to break my fall. Coach Hale was beside me in an instant, professional concern on his face. "Reed, you all right?" "Fine," I gasped, embarrassment burning hotter than the pain. "Let me see." His hands were gentle but clinical as he examined my ankle. "Can you put weight on it?" I tried to stand and winced. "Sort of. That is a mild sprain. Let S get you to the bench." Without hesitation, he slipped an arm around my waist, supporting my weight as we moved to the sidelines. To the rest of the class, it would look like standard first aid protocol. Only I felt the tension in his body, the careful way he held himself slightly apart, even while helping me. "Continue your laps," he instructed the class. "Jeff, you are in charge of counting. I need to get an ice pack." He returned with a first aid kit and sat on the bench beside me, a professional distance between us. "Elevate your foot," he directed, placing a folded towel under my ankle. Then he pressed an ice pack against the swelling, his fingers brushing my skin. "Thank you," I murmured, unable to meet his eyes. "Just doing my job," he replied, but there was a softness in his voice that belied the words. Thunder crashed outside, louder than before, and the lights went out completely. Several students yelped in surprise. I felt rather than saw Marcus tense beside me. "Everyone stay where you are," he called out, his voice steady and reassuring. "Emergency lights should kick in momentarily." Sure enough, dim backup lighting flickered on, casting long shadows across the gymnasium. "Practice is over for today," he announced. "Hit the showers and head back to your dorms before the storm gets worse. Be careful out there." As the class filed out, he turned back to me. "Can you make it to the locker room?" I nodded, attempting to stand. The pain made me grimace. "Easy," he murmured, his arm returning to my waist. "Lean on me." The locker room was empty by the time we reached it, the other students having hurried out to beat the worsening storm. Marcus helped me to a bench and stepped back, maintaining his professional demeanor. "You should ice that for 20 minutes, then wrap it. Do you have someone who can help you back to your dorm?" "My roommate has a night class," I admitted, "but I'll be fine." He frowned. "That campus path gets slippery in the rain. With your ankle like this." He hesitated, conflict clear on his face. "I can drive you." "I don't think that is a good idea." Another crash of thunder, followed by the howl of wind. Rain lashed against the small windows, high on the locker room wall. "It is my responsibility to ensure student safety," he said firmly. "Let me get changed, and I'll take you home." Before I could protest further, he disappeared into the coach's changing area. I sat there, ankle throbbing, listening to the storm, and wondering how I ended up in this situation. When Marcus returned, he changed into jeans and a gray Henley, a leather jacket slung over his arm. Without his coaching uniform, he looked different, less like the intimidating authority figure, and more like Luna, the person I'd fallen for. "My car is in the faculty lot," he said, offering me an umbrella. "Can you walk that far with support?" I nodded, accepting his help reluctantly. We made our way slowly through the empty hallways, his arm secure around my waist, my hand gripping his shoulder for balance. The contact was necessary, practical, and yet electricity seemed to flow between us at every point of connection. Outside, the storm had intensified. Wind whipped the rain sideways, rendering the umbrella nearly useless. By the time we reached his car, a modest blue Subaru, we were both half soaked. "Sorry about this," he said, helping me into the passenger seat. "Weather forecast didn't T mention anything this severe. Inside the car, the space felt intimate, confined. The patter of rain against the roof created a cocoon of white noise, isolating us from the world outside. Marcus started the engine, turning the heater on full. "Where's your dorm?" he asked. Hands on the steering wheel, eyes forward. "Westlake Hall," I replied, equally careful not to look at him directly. As he navigated the rain, slicked campus roads, silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words. Finally, I couldn't bear it any longer. "Why did you stop messaging me?" I asked quietly. His hands tightened on the wheel. "You said you needed time. I was respecting that. I didn't ask you to disappear completely." "What did you want from me, Ethan?" He glanced at me briefly, something raw in his expression. Half measures, polite distance, while pretending none of this matters. "Because I can. Do that." "I don't. Know what I want," I admitted. "This situation is impossible." "It is complicated," he corrected. "Not impossible." We turned into the parking area near my residence hall. The storm had cleared most students from the pathways, leaving us relatively alone. Marcus parked as close to the entrance as possible. "Wait here," he said, grabbing the umbrella before coming around to my side of the car. When he opened my door, he crouched slightly, offering his shoulder for support. "Lean on me." We made our way slowly toward the building entrance, my arm around his shoulders, his around my waist. The rain soaked through our clothes, despite the umbrella, plastering my hair to my forehead. When my injured foot slipped on wet pavement, his grip tightened instinctively, pulling me against his chest to prevent a fall. For a moment, we stayed frozen like that, my face inches from his arm locked around me protectively. I could feel his heartbeat, rapid and strong, through our wet clothes. "I've got you," he murmured, and in those 3 words I heard Luna, the person who had held me emotionally through late night anxiety attacks, who knew my fears and dreams, who had become essential to me without ever being physically present. "Marcus," I whispered, his name foreign on my tongue. Lightning illuminated his face, the strong jaw, the intensity in his dark eyes, the vulnerability he never showed in class. In that flash of clarity, I saw both the intimidating coach and the gentle soul I'd fallen for online, finally merged into one complete person. Then the thunder crashed, breaking the moment. He helped me to the entrance, maintaining a steadying grip but careful not to hold me too close again. At the lobby door, he released me. "Will you be okay from here? Do you need help getting to your room?" I shook my head. "I can manage. Thank you for the ride." He nodded, taking a step back, water dripping from his jacket. "Ice that ankle tonight. If it is still swollen tomorrow, see the campus clinic." Always the coach, even now. But his eyes said something different. They held concern that went beyond professional obligation. "Good night, Ethan," he said softly, turning to leave. "Wait." The word escaped before I could reconsider. He paused, looking back at me questioningly. The person I knew online, the one who understood me, who saw me, was that really you? His expression softened. Every word, every thought, every feeling, that was all me, Ethan. As he walked back to his car through the downpour, I watched him go, my heart racing with confusion and possibility. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what it might mean to know Marcus Hale, not as my instructor, not as the online presence I imagined, but as the complex, contradictory whole of both. The campus library became my sanctuary. In the following days, my ankle healed quickly, but my emotional confusion only intensified. I buried myself in assignments, seeking distraction in literature analysis and media theory papers. Late Thursday evening, I was ensconced in a quiet corner of the 3rd floor, surrounded by reference books, when footsteps approached my isolated table. I looked up to find Marcus standing there, a book on sports psychology in his hand. "Sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't realize you were here. I can find another spot." The library was nearly empty at this hour. His presence could have been coincidence. "It is fine," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "There is room." He sat down cautiously, as if approaching a skittish animal, in casual clothes, dark jeans and a simple gray sweater. He looked like a graduate student rather than an instructor. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. "Working on your communication theory paper?" he asked, nodding toward my laptop. I raised an eyebrow. "How did you know about that?" A small smile touched his lips. "You've been stressing about it for 2 weeks," said the professor. Expectations were impossible to meet. The realization hit me. ID told Luna about this assignment in detail, more evidence that they were truly the same person. "Right," I murmured, uncomfortable with the reminder. We fell into silence, each pretending to focus on our respective work, but I was acutely aware of his presence. The way he absently chewed his lower lip while reading, how his broad shoulders hunched slightly as he made notes, the gentle tap of his pen against the table when he was thinking. After 20 minutes of this charged silence, I couldn't take it anymore. "This isn't tea working," I blurted out. He looked up, startled. "What isn't tea?" "This pretending, acting like we read just a teacher and student who happened to be studying in the same spot." Marcus set down his pen carefully. "What would you prefer, Ethan? I am trying to respect your boundaries." "I know, but it is making everything worse, somehow." I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. "I keep thinking about everything we shared online, things I've never told anyone else. And now every time I see you in class, I remember that you know all of it." "I would never use anything you told me against you," he said quietly. "Those conversations were private." "That is not what I mean." I struggled to articulate the real issue. "It is that you know me, the real me, not the quiet student who blends into the background. You know my thoughts, my fears, my dreams, and I thought I knew you too, but I turned out to be different than you imagined." "Yes, number." I shook my head. "The problem is that you are not different. When we talk like this, I can hear Luna in everything you say. The way you phrase things, how you listen, it is all the same, and it is messing with my head." His expression softened. "I am sorry. I never meant to confuse you." "I know." I closed my laptop, no longer pretending to work. "Why did you come here tonight? Really?" He hesitated, then admitted, "I missed talking to you. Our conversations were the best part of my day for months. And now," he trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the space between us. "I missed it too," I confessed, surprised by my own honesty. Something shifted in his eyes, hope perhaps. "Ethan, I know this situation is complicated, but what if we just talked? Not as teacher and student, not with any expectations. Just talked like we used to." The suggestion was tempting, dangerously so. "I don't know if I can separate things that neatly." "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I'd rather try than continue this awkward avoidance." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my roommate, locked out again. "Need your key ASAP." I sighed, showing Marcus the message. "I have to go. Roommate emergency." He nodded, disappointment flashing across his features. "Of course." As I gathered my books, he stood to help, handing me a reference volume, ID almost forgotten. Our fingers brushed during the exchange, sending an electric current up my arm. "Thanks," I murmured, pulling back quickly. "Ethan," he said as I turned to leave, "would you be willing to meet me somewhere to talk properly, away from campus?" The request hung in the air between us, weighted with implications. Meeting intentionally would be crossing a line I'd been careful to maintain. "I am not sure that is a good idea." "Probably not," he agreed with a rueful smile. "But I think we need to address this situation directly, if either of us is going to move forward." He was right, as Luna so often had been during our late night discussions. This limbo was unsustainable. "There is a coffee shop on Maple Street," I said finally. "Tomorrow at 5. His relief was palpable. I'll be there. As I walked back to my dorm through the crisp autumn evening, my thoughts were a chaotic tangle. Part of me knew I was making a dangerous choice. Another part, the part that had fallen for the person behind the screen name, was already counting the hours until our meeting. The coffee shop was half empty when I arrived the next day, the after-work rush having already dissipated. Marcus was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups. He stood when he saw me, uncertainty in his posture. "I got you chai latte," he said as I approached. "Still your favorite?" The thoughtfulness of the gesture, remembering such a small detail, hit me unexpectedly hard. "Yes, thank you." I sat across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Outside, darkness was falling early, streetlights flickering on one by one. "So," I began awkwardly. "So," he echoed, a hint of Luna's wry humor in his tone. "This is weird," I blurted out. He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Incredibly weird, but necessary, I think." I nodded, taking a sip of my perfectly prepared chai. "I have questions." "I figured you might. Ask me anything, Ethan, no more half-truths." "When did you realize I was your student?" He leaned back in his chair, considering. "It was when you mentioned the poetry reading at Westlake Hall. You said your roommate was forcing you to go, and you were nervous about possibly being called on to read your own work." I remembered that conversation vividly, how Luna had encouraged me to embrace the opportunity, had even helped me select which poem to read if asked. I checked the university events calendar after our conversation. Marcus continued. "When I saw it was at our campus, I put the pieces together. I knew a student named Ethan Reed was in my Tuesday, Thursday PS section, but I never made the connection to Dreaming of Love until then." "And you didn't say anything?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen countless times in class, now imbued with new meaning. "I should have. I know that, but I was afraid of losing what we had. Our conversations had become important to me, and I knew once you found out who I was." Run, I finished for him. Yes, his honesty was disarming. Selfishly, I wanted to preserve that connection. I told myself I wasn't crossing any ethical lines, because our discussions weren't related to academics or your performance in my class. "But you are still my teacher." "Teaching assistant," he corrected gently, "and only for a required physical education credit, not your actual major. But yes, there is still a power dynamic I should have acknowledged sooner." His self-awareness surprised me. It was exactly what Luna would have said, taking responsibility without making excuses. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked. "Yes, I was working up to it." He met my gaze directly. "I was planning to suggest we meet after the semester ended, when I wouldn't be evaluating you anymore. But I pushed for meeting sooner." "You did." A small smile touched his lips. "You can be quite persistent when you want something." I felt heat rise to my cheeks, remembering how eagerly I suggested our coffee shop meeting, how I imagined finally meeting the sweet, thoughtful girl I'd grown to care for deeply. "I feel like such an idiot," I admitted. "There were so many clues." "You saw what you expected to see," he said gently. "We all do that." I studied him across the table, the strong line of his jaw, the intelligent eyes that had intimidated me in class, but had also, in a different context, seen through to my core. In his expression, I could finally see traces of Luna, the empathy, the thoughtfulness, the careful consideration before speaking. "I don't know how to reconcile the two versions of you in my head," I confessed. "Coach Hale, who makes me run laps and critiques my terrible basketball form, and Luna, who understood my poetry and talked me through panic attacks at 2 a.m. They both me, Ethan. I am not different people in different contexts, just more or less guarded." He leaned forward, arms resting on the table. "In class, I have to maintain certain boundaries, but the person you got to know online, that is the real me too, the part I don't usually get to share in my professional role. The literature lover who analyzes Oscar Wilde at midnight. He smiled. Exactly. Teaching physical education wasn't my first choice. You know, I have a master's in comparative literature, but coaching positions were what opened up when I needed work. This new piece of information shifted my perception yet again. You never mentioned that. It didn't seem relevant to our conversations. We connected over literature naturally without credentials entering into it. He hesitated, then added softly, "That is what I valued most about talking with you. You engaged with ideas, not appearances or positions." The irony wasn't lost on me, except I had a very specific appearance in mind for you. "We all make assumptions," he acknowledged. "The question is what we do when they re-challenged." Outside, rain began to fall, droplets racing down the cafe window and blurring the streetlights into golden smears. The gentle patter created a sense of intimacy, as if we were enclosed in our own private world. "What do you want from me, Marcus?" I asked finally, using his first name intentionally. He seemed to consider the question carefully. "Honestly, I want us to keep talking. I miss our conversations. Your insights, your perspective. I miss the connection we had." He paused, choosing his words with Luna's characteristic precision. "But I understand if that is not possible now. If knowing who I am changes everything for you." "It does change things," I admitted, "but maybe not in the way you think." His eyebrows lifted in question. "Before, there was this safe distance. The screen between us made it easy to share things, to be vulnerable. Now," I gestured vaguely between us, "now it is real in a way it wasn't before, and that is terrifying. Because I am your teacher, partly, but also because—" I took a deep breath, finally acknowledging what had been troubling me most. "Because the person I fell for online turns out to be someone I could actually be attracted to in real life, and I don't know what to do with that." The admission hung in the air between us. Marcus went very still, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he said finally, his voice low and careful, "I need to be clear about something. Until this semester ends and you are no longer my student, nothing can happen between us. Regardless of how I feel, it wouldn't be ethical." "How you feel?" I echoed, heart suddenly racing. His eyes met mine, intense and unwavering. "I think you know. Everything I shared with you online was real, including how much I came to care for you." The confession should have complicated things further. Instead, it cut through the confusion, offering a strange clarity. There were still boundaries, still complications, but at least now the truth was between us. 8 weeks, I said quietly. "That is how long until the semester ends." He nodded. 8 weeks of maintaining appropriate boundaries, of being just a teacher and student in public. And after that, a smile slowly spread across his face, warm, genuine, and unmistakably Luna's. "After that, we figure it out together. No usernames, no assumptions, just us." Rain continued to fall outside, cocooning us in our private moment of understanding. For the first time since our disastrous meeting, I felt the tension in my chest begin to ease. 8 weeks suddenly seemed both an eternity and no time at all. The gymnasium was eerily quiet when I arrived for the final physical education class of the semester. Outside, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising another December storm. Most students had already completed their finals and other courses and left campus for winter break, but PE required attendance until the very last session. Coach Hale, Marcus, stood at center court, clipboard in hand. The past 8 weeks had been an exercise in careful distance. In class, he was the consummate professional, treating me exactly as he did every other student. Outside of class, we limited our interactions to occasional texts, maintaining the connection we de-established without crossing boundaries. It had been the longest 8 weeks of my life. "All right, everyone," he called, as the small group of remaining students gathered. Since it is our last session, we LL keep it light. Basketball scrimmage, 2 teams. He divided us quickly, placing me on the opposite team from himself, as always. As we took our positions, our eyes met briefly across the court. A familiar warmth spread through my chest, the same feeling ID had during countless late night conversations with Luna, now attached to this physical presence. The game began, and I found myself playing with unusual focus. Months of drills had improved my coordination somewhat, though I was still far from athletic. When I managed to intercept a pass and score, surprise registered on several faces, including Marcus S. "Nice move, Reed," he called, professional approval in his tone, but I caught the pride in his eyes, the slight smile he could quite suppress. Halfway through the game, the storm arrived in earnest. Thunder crashed overhead, and the lights flickered ominously. A moment later, they went out completely, leaving only the dim emergency lighting. "All right, that is it for today and the semester," Marcus announced. "Hit the showers and get to your dorms before this storm gets worse." Students hurried to comply, eager to begin their winter break. I lingered, pretending to tie my shoe, waiting until the others had filed into the locker room. "You played well today," Marcus said, approaching with the basketball tucked under his arm. "I had a good teacher," I replied, the double meaning clear between us. He smiled, glancing toward the locker room to ensure we were alone. "Final grades will be posted tomorrow. Spoiler alert, you passed." "Just passed?" I raised an eyebrow in mock offense. "With flying colors," he amended, his voice softening. "You improved significantly, Ethan. Not just in skills, but in confidence." Another crash of thunder, closer this time. The emergency lights flickered but held. "You should get going," he said reluctantly. "Storm's getting worse." "Actually," I began, gathering my courage, "I was hoping we could talk properly, since after today, I am officially not your student anymore." His expression shifted, intensity replacing professional distance. "I'd like that, but maybe not here." "My roommate left yesterday," I offered. "My dorm is empty until January." The implication hung between us electric with possibility. "I need to lock up here first," he said, his voice lower than before. "Give me 15 minutes." I nodded, pulse quickening. I'll wait. The locker room was deserted when I entered. I showered quickly, changing into jeans and a sweater. ID brought 4 after class. By the time Marcus entered, I was sitting on a bench, pretending to check my phone while my heart raced. "Ready?" he asked, now dressed in dark jeans and a blue Henley that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. He carried a black duffel bag and a jacket draped over his arm. Outside, the storm had intensified. Rain poured in sheets, the wind whipping it sideways. Marcus opened a large umbrella, pulling me close beneath it. The shelter was minimal against the onslaught, but I barely noticed the rain soaking into my clothes. His arm around my shoulders felt like coming home. We hurried across campus, the paths nearly deserted in the downpour. By the time we reached Westlake Hall, we were both half, drenched despite the umbrella. I fumbled with my key card at the entrance, hyper-aware of his presence behind me. The elevator ride to the 4th floor was silent, charged with unspoken anticipation. Water dripped from our clothes onto the floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the confined space. When our eyes met in the mirrored wall, the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. My single room was modest but private, a luxury afforded to upperclassmen. I unlocked the door with slightly trembling hands, suddenly nervous about the unmade bed, the books scattered across my desk, the intimate glimpse into my personal space. "Sorry about the mess," I murmured as we entered. "Wasn't he expecting company?" Marcus set his bag down, taking in the details of my room, the poetry books stacked on the nightstand, the vintage camera on the shelf, the literary quotes pinned to a corkboard above my desk. His eyes lingered on a handwritten note posted centrally. "The mystery of love is greater than the mystery of death. The Meisker Wild." You quoted that to me once, he said softly. The night we first discussed Salem. You remembered. I remember everything, Ethan. He turned to face me fully, water still beating in his dark hair. Every conversation, every word. The space between us seemed to contract, the small room suddenly even smaller. Outside, rain lashed against the window, thunder rumbling in the distance. You are soaked, I observed, desperate for something neutral to say. He glanced down at his damp shirt with a rueful smile. So are you. I can lend you something dry, I offered, moving toward my dresser, though it might be a bit small. I brought a change of clothes, he said, gesturing to his duffel bag. Gym habit. An awkward silence fell between us. After 8 weeks of careful distance, after a year of screen-mediated intimacy, the physical reality of being alone together was overwhelming. This is strange, isn't it? I finally said, after all this time talking online, now we here, he finished. Actually, in the same room. No usernames, no profiles, no misunderstandings about who we are, I added quietly. He took a step closer, close enough that I could see the droplets of rain still clinging to his eyelashes. Is that what this was? A misunderstanding? I shook my head slowly. I think it was more like seeing part of the truth, the part that mattered most. And what part was that? His voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. The part where I fell in love with your mind before I ever knew what you looked like. The admission slipped out before I could reconsider, hanging in the air between us. Marcus went very still, his eyes searching mine. Ethan, he said, my name like a prayer on his lips. Then he closed the distance between us, one hand coming up to cup my face with exquisite gentleness. May I? He asked, thumb brushing my cheekbone. I nodded, unable to form words, and then his lips were on mine, soft, questioning, undemanding, a chaste kiss that nevertheless sent electricity coursing through my body. When he began to pull away, I followed instinctively, hands reaching up to grip his shoulders. The second kiss was different, deeper, more certain. His arms encircled me, drawing me against his chest as my fingers tangled in his damp hair. He tasted of rain and possibility, familiar and new all at once. When we finally separated, both slightly breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you walk into that café, he confessed, even when you realized I wasn't what you expected. He smiled, brushing a strand of wet hair from my forehead. You were exactly what I expected, Ethan. The packaging was just different. The simple truth of his words dissolved the last of my hesitation. This was Luna. The person who had seen me understood me, accepted me completely. The physical form that contained that essence was secondary to the connection we built. We should get out of these wet clothes, I suggested, then blushed at the implication. I know what you mean, he said with a soft laugh, though I wouldn't object to the alternative interpretation. The playful comment broke the tension, reminding me of the easy banter we shared online. I gestured toward the small bathroom attached to my room. You can change in there if you want. He nodded, retrieving his bag. When the bathroom door closed behind him, I quickly changed into dry sweatpants and a shirt, heart still racing from our kiss. Marcus emerged a few minutes later in gray track pants and a simple black shirt that highlighted the definition in his arms. Without his usual coaching attire, he looked younger, more approachable, more like the person I'd imagined behind Luna's thoughtful messages. Better, he asked, running a hand through his now towel-dried hair. Much, I agreed, acutely aware of how different this setting was from our previous interactions. The classroom, the crowded gym, the public café. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the room in stark white light. The subsequent thunder rattled the window panes. Then, with an electronic whine, the lights went out completely. Campus power grid, I explained in the sudden darkness. It always fails during big storms. Do you have a flashlight? Marcus, His voice came from somewhere to my left. Phone light, I replied, fumbling for my device on the desk. The blue glow illuminated his face as I turned it on, casting dramatic shadows across his features. Well, he said with a smile, this is atmospheric. I laughed, the sound easing some of the nervous tension in my chest. Very gothic romance. Is that what this is? He asked softly. A romance? The question hung between us, weighted with possibility. In the dim light of my phone, with rain pounding against the window and thunder rolling overhead, it felt like we existed in a world apart, outside normal rules and boundaries. I hope so, I answered. Honestly, because I've spent a year falling in love with who you are on the inside, and these past 8 weeks discovering that I am just as attracted to who you are on the outside. He moved closer, taking the phone from my hand and setting it on the desk, screen up so it cast a gentle glow around us. Then he took both my hands in his touch warm and steady. From the first time I read your analysis of Wild, I was captivated by your mind, he said quietly, by how you saw beauty in complexity, found meaning in contradiction. I never expected to find someone who understood the parts of myself I usually keep hidden. His thumbs traced circles on my palms, sending shivers up my arms. When I realized you were in my class, I should have maintained professional distance, but I was already in too deep. Every message, every late-night conversation just confirmed what I already knew. What was that? I asked, barely breathing. That I was falling in love with you, he said simply, and that it had nothing to do with what either of us looked like or what roles we played in the daylight world. The confession, so similar to things Luna had written in our most intimate conversations, felt different spoken aloud, in Marcus' steep voice, with his hands holding mine. I am not your student anymore, I whispered, stepping closer until our bodies nearly touched. No more boundaries. His eyes darkened. Are you sure, Ethan, there is no rush? In answer, I closed the remaining distance between us, rising slightly on my toes to press my lips to his. This kiss held nothing back. All the longing, confusion, and desire of the past months poured into a single point of contact. Marcus responded instantly, one arm circling my waist to pull me flush against him, the other hand cradling the back of my head. His body was solid, strong, radiating heat that chased away the lingering chill of the rain. When we broke apart, gasping for breath, his expression was transformed, desire evident in his darkened eyes, the flush across his cheekbones, the slight parting of his lips. Ethan, he murmured, voice rough with emotion, you have no idea how long I've wanted this. Show me, I challenged, courage born from the certainty that this was right, that the connection we built over countless words exchanged was real and lasting. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but within the small sanctuary of my room, we created our own weather system, a slow, building tempest of touch and taste and whispered confessions. Clothes were discarded, boundaries dissolved, as we explored this new dimension of our relationship. Marcus' hands, so capable on the basketball court, proved equally skilled in more intimate contexts. His mouth, which had delivered stern coaching instructions and written such beautiful messages, now traced pathways across my skin that left me trembling. Is this okay? He asked repeatedly, checking consent at every escalation, his care for my comfort reminiscent of how attentively Luna had always listened to my needs. More than okay, I assured him, growing bolder in my own explorations, mapping the contours of his body with eager hands. When we finally came together completely, the last barriers between us dissolving, it felt like the culmination of a year-long conversation, each touch a word, each gasp a sentence building to a perfect understanding. Afterward, lying tangled in my narrow dorm bed with the storm still howling outside, Marcus traced lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. The phone light had long since dimmed, leaving us in comfortable darkness broken only by occasional flashes of lightning. "What happens now?" I asked, head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. His arms tightened around me. "Now we start a new chapter. No usernames, no classroom roles. Just Marcus and Ethan figuring things out together. Will it be complicated, you working at the university? Me still a student? Probably," he admitted with a soft laugh. "But worth it. Besides, I am just a teaching assistant in a department completely unrelated to your major. There are no official rules against it." I propped myself up on one elbow, studying his face in the brief illumination of lightning. "So this is real. We were really doing this." Marcus reached up to brush my hair back from my forehead, his touch infinitely tender, as real as everything we shared online. More real, maybe, because now there are no screens between us, no assumptions, just truth. "The truth is," I said softly, "I fell in love twice, once with Luna and once with you, and it turns out you are the same person after all." His smile was radiant even in the darkness. The greatest plot twist of all. As thunder rumbled overhead and rain continued to lash against the window, we held each other close, no longer separated by screens or misunderstandings or professional boundaries. The storm that had brought us together physically, the first time had returned to witness our true beginning, not as dreaming of love and Luna, not as student and teacher, but as Ethan and Marcus. Two people who had found each other first in words, then in reality, creating a love story neither could have imagined when they first discussed Oscar Wilde on a literature forum 1 year ago. Outside, the storm began to abate, the spaces between thunder growing longer, the rain softening from violent downpour to gentle patter. But inside, in the warm cocoon of tangled limbs and whispered promises, a different kind of storm was just beginning, one of possibility, of future, of love finally recognized in all its complexity. The sweet girl I'd imagined had never existed, but the person I'd fallen for, the mind, the heart, the soul behind those messages, was real, and somehow, impossibly, even better than I'd dreamed.